Hello everyone and welcome to This Nintendo Life episode 166, aptly named I feel for our current situation and the world and everything happening. It feels like an Order 66 has been passed down from many governments on high to the peoples of the world as we deal with COVID-19 and the global pandemic that surrounds us. But hey, we're still here at the moment. And we're talking about video games. I'm Nbz. I'm joined, of course, by Bally. How are you doing, Bally?
I'm very good. Going to try out Disney Plus later today. We've got Animal Crossing on the go.
Yes.
There's things to do when you're kind of living your entire life at home at the moment.
Yes, that is the case. The other thing you can do when you live at home is to become a viral influencer like me.
That's a good one.
And have a tweet blow up that goes ridiculous. That's definitely an interesting thing, and I'm sure we'll talk about Animal Crossing and social media when we get to that part of the show. But anyway, lots of things to talk about on today's show. Ballard, do you want to tell the fine folks at home what we're going to be chatting about?
Today we are going to do a 2-segment show. For the first segment, we're going to be talking about the games that we have been playing, and the second segment, we've got a bit of a news roundup. There was a Nintendo Direct Mini as well as an Indies Direct that we want to have a chat about.
Fantastic. So, let's get into it, Bally. It has been an interesting week or so, and I feel like lives have changed in a matter of days. I'm now in Edinburgh. I escaped London because the lockdown there is going to be real bad, and there's still lockdown everywhere, but I'm in Edinburgh now, and we have been playing Animal Crossing pretty much non-stop. It is really such a weird coincidence, but it is the game that I think people needed right now, and it's the game that is just everywhere. Everyone is playing Animal Crossing. I cannot escape it. It is just eternal. I saw Maisie Williams from Game of Thrones this morning posting about Animal Crossing. Like, it's just infected every element of people's lives, and I think it's because, people want to escape. People want to go to a nice island, live out their fantasy of not having a mortgage that they have to pay off too quickly, and things like that. You still have to do that. Tom Nook is still around,
and it's kind of to come at a time on top of the fact that it's just been so long since an original Animal Crossing that people were already so keen to play a new Animal Crossing, on top of the fact that it's launching on one of Nintendo's most successful systems in a very long time in the Nintendo Switch. That it's just all these factors on top of COVID-19. It's just all playing together that this is just the thing that everyone is playing and talking about.
Yeah, it's definitely capturing kind of a spirit and a moment, and I think it's pretty cool. So let's maybe talk about Animal Crossing. When was the last time you played an Animal Crossing, Bally? What's your history with Animal Crossing?
My history with Animal Crossing was the first one I played was Wild World on the Nintendo DS. We both played a lot of that game. That was kind of like the game I played a lot of at the time, and then the Wii version, City Folk, came out it felt like it was fairly soon after. I think it was like 3, 4, 5, potentially more than that years later.
I believe it was 2009, the City Folk. We should say in the UK it was called Let's Go to the City, everyone's favourite localization. It was like 4 years maybe after.
So I must have played maximum 10, 15 hours, maybe even 20 hours. I don't know, like really small amount of time for Animal Crossing.
I mean, the most vivid memory I have of Let's Go to the City is both of us trying to use the Wii Speak, everyone's favorite peripheral, and it just being a clusterfuck and not working at all. For those who don't know, the Wii Speak was basically the peripheral for the Wii that you put on top of your TV, on the sensor bar really, and was supposed to capture audio from the whole room. So it wasn't like having a microphone directly near your mouth. It was just like, hey, let's just take every sound source, including the audio from the game sometimes, which would get mangled in, and was a very poor voice solution for Nintendo.
So we were already reflecting our sound back to each other, even though there were only two of us, which was terrible.
Yes,
but then honestly, City Folk kind of put me off massively. I thought, right, I've had my fill of Animal Crossing. This game has proven that like I'm not in the mood for more Animal Crossing. And then 2013, when New Leaf came around, kind of just felt, even though it's 4 years later, felt too soon for me to like go down that path again. And I just decided, even though I was playing quite a lot of games by 2013, I just thought, I'm not going to play this game. It's just not my cup of tea. But then as the years have gone on, and here we are 7 years later, that like yearning for more Animal Crossing came back, and it's really kind of hit out of the park with this game.
Yeah, so I'm similar to you. Obviously, we grew up playing Wild World. Like, I must have dumped 300-400 hours into Wild World minimum. And City, Let's Go to the City was, again, kind of a disappointment. I did play New Leaf, so I got it when it came out. There was also kind of a time when, lots of people from the Pokemon community were playing it, and so it was a good thing socially to play with other people. But I also got it for free, essentially, because there was a 3DS promotion back in the day where if you bought 2 of these games, you'd get a third one for free. So I believe I bought like Donkey Kong Country 3D and another game, and then I managed to get Animal Crossing for free digitally because I wanted it digitally on 3DS. Because, Animal Crossing, it's a game you check in with daily. Sometimes you're only for half an hour or so, and so you always want it accessible and easy and right there. So that's why, getting it digitally would work the best. And we both got it. Did you get it digitally for Switch?
Did get it digitally for Switch, yes.
Yeah, which I think is a good decision. I think it's definitely the way to go with a game like this. So yeah, I like New Leaf a good amount. I think that the Mare stuff wasn't as big of a step as it probably needed to be. Like, it started to move into the area of like, hey, you can do these building works, and there was the islands that you could go to with the bugs and stuff like that. But fundamentally, it was still kind of the same Animal Crossing. And I think New Horizons, though it's still very fundamentally Animal Crossing, represents the biggest step the series has taken in quite some time. Like, I would say this is the biggest step since the original on GameCube came out. And a lot of reasons for that, right? Like, there's so many different elements to this game that have made it far more of a kind of canvas upon which you can express yourself and your town and anything you want to put in it. The very simple act of placing down an item that you'd only usually be able to put in a house onto the island has fundamentally changed, I think, my approach to how I view the island and how I view the entire game, as it were, because back in the day, I really only cared about what was in my house. Did I have all the Nintendo items? Could I make a cool room? Could I get all the furniture sets? And now that customization has just been exploded onto this more kind of global level, right? With your entire village being an example of that.
Yeah, it totally kind of makes you care a lot more about the stuff outside your house. And honestly, I've got a bit of like, I've got so many options that it's kind of like analysis paralysis, they call it, like in the board game scene, where you have so many options that you just freeze. And I kind of feel that in certain mornings where the game is very good early on at like gradually breadcrumbing this to that and gradually growing. But I'm at this point now where I'm only making a certain amount of money per day, roughly, unless I really want to kind of farm fish and bugs or whatever. And then I need to decide, am I going to keep going into my house, or am I going to invest more in my town and make sure like the houses are where I want them to be, and like bridges and, stoops like to go up to elevated platforms. And I'm kind of the opinion, like, I'd rather just focus on my house initially. I'm going to unlock sort of terraforming options, and that's when I'm really going to go to town on changing my town, kind of like making all the houses in a row on the beach that I want to do, or put them all up in the mountain with the campsite and all these cool things. So
yeah, and it's interesting, right? Because I think that this game has taken from quite a few games that have been out around these years. I think Minecraft is an obvious influence on Animal Crossing, right? Like, I don't think back in 2013 Minecraft had gained its kind of global ridiculous heights that it currently sits at. Obviously, it was very popular and famous and stuff, but I think Minecraft's had a huge influence, obviously, on things like Breath of the Wild and now on the crafting in Animal Crossing, and the idea of you just being able to kind of make your own space, essentially, and that stuff has been very interesting to approach, right? How do you feel about the breakable items? Because again, that's another kind of Breath of the Wild thing coming in here that I feel a lot of people will be very annoyed by. I've never been someone who's that bothered by breakable weapons, right? When you grow up playing Fire Emblem, it's kind of drilled into you that like it's fine, you just get a new one.
Nothing is forever.
Nothing is forever. There's no permanence, of course. So I definitely have found that once you upgrade to the kind of second tier of items, that they'll last for usually a day or so, and then you'll have to make a new one. And I have a system whereby I've got a mini workbench inside my house, and so I go in there, I access my storage where I keep all my iron nuggets and my hardwood and all that stuff. I go in there, get what I need, make what I need, and then just put it back into storage, and it's a very seamless process. It's not... And here's the thing, right? People who are, I guess, speed running Animal Crossing are like, oh, I need to do this, I need to do this, I need to be as fast as possible. I don't know, like, you can approach the game like that, but I just don't think Animal Crossing is the kind of game where something like an item breaking is really a thing that you should be too worried about, because it is a game that you can take as slowly at your own pace as you like. You know, it's a pouring, long, kind of year project, as it were, of you finding everything and inviting animals to your village, shaping it to your liking. And I don't think it bothers me at all, really. It's kind of like, oh, it broke, I'm fine, let's just go make another one. You know, like there's kind of a sense of, like, the feeling that Animal Crossing gives you puts you in a mode where you can get less frustrated. And I think that's probably less the case in an action game like Breath of the Wild, where you're in the middle of a fight and a thing breaks and you're like, fuck's sake, I need to find a thing. But again, I don't feel that way about that game either, because things breaking just means you have to improvise and then weird shit happens and it's just amazing.
I think the way items and weapons break in Breath of the Wild versus this game does feel very different, where this game, it just feels like it's a part of your routine, whereas, as you said, in Breath of the Wild, it's almost entirely changing the way you play that game in certain aspects, depending on, for example, what enemies you're about to encounter. So in this game, it is about that routine, and as you said, you're in this game for the long haul, and I do think you get the most out of it by playing a smaller amount every day rather than burning out and playing for 5 hours a day for the first month, even though that's what I'm more or less starting to do. But what I mean by that is, even this last week, there were a couple of days where I only spent maybe 30, 40 minutes, but I made sure in those 30, 40 minutes, I was still doing important stuff that progressed. For example, like, I'm having a couple of areas of my island where the density of foreign fruit trees is really, really high, and I'm not worried about how ugly they look or how cramped they are. I just want as many as possible in the smallest space as possible in order to make as much money as possible. So, like, it's this idea that my town doesn't look perfect yet, but at the moment that the project is to make money, get more villagers, get my house upgraded. For example, I stayed up very late the other night trying to get a sturgeon, trying to get all the necessary fish before the end of March, which is one stressful thing that this game definitely has.
Yes.
I'm glad I overcame, and
at the very least, right, the southern and northern hemispheres exist now, so you can go to different places, which means that you could, you know, even if you missed a sturgeon or whatever, you could theoretically go to a southern hemisphere town not too long down the road. Like, you wouldn't have to wait until next March in order to get one, basically. Because I've been to some other towns, I've been to a southern hemisphere town, and I've caught a bunch of fish that are just not available right now in our area of the world.
And to be fair, I think there's very few bugs and fish that only appear for like a month. They're normally a whole season, so it wouldn't be till next March I'd need to get a sturgeon. It would just be until, say, like winter or spring. So like
December or January or something like that.
So it's totally doable. And I am feeling very much keen on doing the long haul, and I can do all my chores, even including fruit picking, in the space of like 30 minutes, 40 minutes, and that's like checking the shop for items, greeting all my villagers, picking fruit, selling, getting the fossils for the day, you know, these sorts of things that just feel like bread and butter in this routine that is just really satisfying for that build to keep going in the first few weeks especially.
And like, fundamentally, you talk about that and you say, my daily routine, I get my fruits, I get my fossils, I get my fish, and I'm like thinking, well, that's what we did in Wild World. Why is it happening again? Why is it feeling so much better this time? And I think there are so many little things that this game has done to improve the overall experience of Animal Crossing. Fruit, even back in New Leaf, didn't auto-stack. Like, you could stack fruit, but you would have to drag each fruit individually on top of one another in your inventory to get them to stacks of 10 or whatever. And that was a bummer, because it's the type of thing where you're like, Nintendo, you should have figured this out at this point. And, like, you know, it took them another 7 years to make another Animal Crossing, but thankfully, they figured it out. Fruit will auto-stack when you pick them up. You can now expand your inventory. Your inventory is so much larger now, which is, I think partially it's because one of the things I would like them to fix, which is, you know, kind of tied into the idea of crafting as well, but your items like your shovel and your net and your fishing rod, I wish that they only existed within the scroll wheel and they didn't exist within your inventory. Like you had even more inventory space to work with, because naturally with all those items, because they're now two different types of axes. You've got your stone axe and you've got your sharp axe, one of which gets wood from trees, one of which cuts down trees. So because of the extra items added, the entire first row of your inventory is usually just dedicated to items that you want to have with you at all times, because who knows when a present flies by and you've got to get your slingshot out quickly. Back in the day on Wild World, I kept my inventory empty of all my items, and I had my letters, so because back in the day you had the letters as part of your inventory. You could have like 8 letters at once, and each letter could hold a present. So I would expand my inventory by putting items onto the letters to hold the items, and then I'd come into the situation where a present would float by and I'd be like, oh fuck, I need to go into my letters and I can't tell which one is holding the slingshot, so like frantically tapping about to try and find the slingshot. And nowadays, it's like, well, there's a scroll wheel, you hit the shoulder button, you just quickly go, or you hit the up button on the D-pad, quickly analog stick over to the slingshot, Bob's your uncle, I shoot down the present. Like, it's just so much more streamlined, so much easier to interact with the kind of labor systems of Animal Crossing, because they've just made it a more approachable experience.
It is much more streamlined, but having played games that are even more streamlined, there is that minor frustration that stuff like the scroll wheel could be better, where it is annoying that your thumb is used to both get up the scroll wheel but also select what within the scroll wheel you want. Like it could have been a shoulder button.
Yeah, they should have used the second analog stick. They should have, because if you're holding down the up button to access it, they should have used your second analog stick to rotate around as opposed to the first one.
The inability to sort of bulk build things like fish bait, for example.
I mean, that's really the only one I've come across so far, which I've been annoyed by, because most of the time, you know, you're making a table or... I
mean, if I could, I'd build like 5 fishing rods in a row so that when they break, I just come back to my chest.
Yeah, that's fair.
Stuff like that. And there are quite a few loading screens every time you go inside and outside of buildings, and this is very much me speaking with my Joseph Anderson hat on, so maybe don't overly judge what I'm saying.
This is like the anti Joseph Anderson game. Like this entire game is about like your time taking to do things, right?
Yeah. The amount your town locks down for the online multiplayer is pretty unforgivable in some aspects. Like, it feels very clunky, but we can totally get to that.
But yeah, in terms of the ability you have to just make your town more individual, I found so exhilarating, right? Like, my current house has a nice little picket fence and there's some flowers in it. I've got a lawnmower set there. I just found out the other day you can move your mailbox if you want, which I didn't know was a thing.
Where can you move it to? Can you move it anywhere and you'll just have to go see it?
I believe so. You can just drop it anywhere in the town, but you can pick it up and drop it. Yeah, I've got a bunch of flowers out by the front of my residential service, and I've got a nice little tire that you can sit on, a little bench there. You know, I'm trying to plan for this nice little outlook park by the sea where I've got some binoculars set up. And it's just, I think it's that long-term goal that Animal Crossing wasn't missing in the past, but... You know, there are certain goals you have. You could be the type of player who wants to fill up the museum. Like, that's kind of like the center in Stardew Valley, where you want to complete the community center. That's kind of the end game of that game. And the museum, like, fills that desire. You also then have your own house. You want to pay off your debt to your house, get every single room, and then decorate it however you want. But now you have the longer term goals, which is like the terraforming that we haven't even got to yet, and the ability to pave roads and build bridges wherever you want and move houses around to create little community areas, and just having orchards of plants. Like, the general overall high level look at your town. And obviously, it will take time to get there, you know, unless you're cheating and doing time traveling, which I've already seen a bunch of people on Twitter do. And there's a lot of FOMO associated with Animal Crossing, right? Like, people talk about Animal Crossing as like, it's the most relaxing game in the world. And yet, all these new people playing, and they're like, the fuck, how does everyone have all this shit? And why do I not have it? And, like, creating this anxiety of, like, am I not playing Animal Crossing correctly? And the thing I'll say to you is, like, you know, you'll go onto Twitter, you'll see amazing things, like... Calm down. It's fine. Your town will be your town. You can take as much time with it as you like, and it doesn't happen overnight, right? Unless you are kind of cheating with time travel.
And like I said at the start, I do think the people who play every day, even if it is for 30, 40 minutes, by the end of this year, I think their towns will look just as good, if not better, than the people who are just, absolutely time traveling and doing all the crazy stuff right now.
And the other point is that if you are playing it like that, then you're more likely to stick with the game versus someone who's like,
exactly.
Well, I've done everything I need to do now. What do I do in Animal Crossing, right? Like they quote unquote beat Animal Crossing. So they will just be done with it after 2 weeks. And in the past, like, I think New Leaf, I probably lasted about a month or so. Wild World was definitely multiple. Like, I remember playing it a New Year.
5-6 months, I want to say.
And we playing it at Christmas and, over the holiday periods and events and stuff like that. But yeah, it was definitely... I foresee this game being more of a Wild World to me. And honestly...
Yeah.
I was around at your place and we had just had an afternoon of like 5 hours in a row just playing Animal Crossing.
I know.
And it took me back so much to playing DS Animal Crossing when we were around at each other's houses, but when we were younger.
Yeah.
It was such a great experience of like, okay, you come to my town and like we helped each other cut down our trees to like clear way and like try to kind of put planning in place for what we wanted to do. But maybe let's talk about that online experience because I've had quite a bit of it. And it has varied, and it's still the one area of this game that is a frustration and a disappointment. Not only in the sense that getting to someone's place or even inviting someone in is just as clunky as it's ever been in any Animal Crossing game and takes as much time and loading screens and waiting for people, especially when you have like 8 people coming into a town at once. It's just like, why don't they just load everyone up and take them all in at once? Or like, obviously there's technical limitations there, but Nintendo could have built the system that was way more streamlined for this, and it is just a bit of a mess getting to each other's towns. Not to mention, when you get there, you're very limited in what you can do. Obviously, we now have the best friends thing, which lets you say, okay, my friend can chop down a tree or is able to dig holes and things like that. But you can't place things on the ground. You can't move things in your house. You can't... So many of these elements that you're locked out of, which really you shouldn't be. And you really would like to see Nintendo go into a direction where 2 people online can work together on making a town, like paving roads and terraforming together and like having this unified vision, but you just can't do that.
I could be like, Nbz, go to my house, pick up whatever extra furniture I have and make, say, this northeastern part of my island look cool, for example, and I'll go work on the northwest part, and then we'll like compare each other's parts later on the island and see what looks better. And you just can't do that, and it's all you can do really is drop off some items, pick up some fruit, chop trees together if you're best friends, go fishing together, go bug catching together, just look at each other's towns. And then after that you're kind of like, well, what else can we do? Let's do some more stuff.
Yeah, and to some degree that limitation has brought upon itself lots of interesting things people have been doing, like playing hide and seek, like making your own fun essentially, having your own...
Well, like the jumble sale where you have like a take one, leave one thing.
Yes.
I've seen that on Twitter. That's quite fun, where you can put, and that's the cool thing, you can put out like a huge big Persian rug that you would like use for trading essentially, and you put all the items on it. It's fun stuff like that. Yeah,
totally. There's a real kind of imagination being captured by people, and like I've seen so many things on tweets and videos of like making jokes about like the current situation of like, here's how people will graduate in 2020, and it's just in Animal Crossing, and the way it's set up, everything is just perfect. It's just so well done. Even people getting married in Animal Crossing, like having birthday parties in Animal Crossing. I love that communities have rallied around this game in terms of just making something out of it that the game doesn't necessarily intend for you to do, but it kind of lets you in a way, right? Like the ability to take pictures and like capture emotions and learn those emotions, which obviously I think it was Dr. Shrunk back in the day who came to your town and you'd able to get different kind of ways to react from him, reactions, and now your villagers kind of give those to you, so it's a bit more easy. And you also, I feel like there's so many more NPCs who visit nowadays, right? Like almost every day there's someone in my town, whether it's Mabel or Sahara or Gulliver, there's always a person showing up, so there's always a reason to check in to get an extra rug or to find that t-shirt that you're waiting for. Obviously, eventually Mabel will set up shop properly, and then you'll get people like Kix coming in, or Flick the bug catcher, or all these other NPCs. But I really like that, because in the past it was very limited. It was like, only once on a Monday at this time period will this character be here, and if you miss it, well, they're gone. So that's been a benefit, I think. And it's also nice because it's not universal throughout other people's towns. Like, I went to your town and you had Sahara that day and I didn't, so I was able to get some extra rugs that I might have not been able to for a little bit of time, which allows a lot more cross-pollination and allowing gifting between different people and sharing items and crafting recipes and things like that. Cool. Any other elements you want to touch upon, Bally?
I just love the sheer amount of customization. It is very much like, I am actually now thinking about, when I have a new neighbor, where to put them in my town, and what I want that area to look like in the future. And it is this kind of long term, like I felt like you purely had one linear long-term goal in the previous games, whereas this time it feels like you have lots of long-term goals. Like, there's on a variety of areas. It is far beyond just your house.
Yes, and the crafting systems, right? Like the collecting of ore from rocks, the collecting of wood from trees. Has that added an element, do you think? Do you think that that's a benefit to the series? Because I think we were both worried a little bit about this coming into the game, of like, is it going to be a little too grindy? Are you going to have to, go around, do these tasks that you don't necessarily want to do in order to craft these items? And I think ultimately it's been a fun kind of extra addition to the game, and it doesn't task you too much. It like adds another thing that you can do, and with the recipes and being able to say, okay, so I'm going to make this desk and I'm going to make this drawer. Now you also have the added kind of customization cartridges, I don't know what you call them, where you can then change it to like a balsa wood or a cherry wood or a blue coloring or a dark wood coloring. And it's that added layer of making it yours as opposed to just like every other cupboard or wardrobe that's out there.
Yeah, totally. And it can, like, those shades of wood can really just make a room look a lot nicer, depending on like the wall and the flooring. And I think generally the crafting, the game has a really good balance of, like, you never feel like there's not enough resources. Maybe apart from initially when you need those 30 iron ore, that is quite a big ask early on in the game.
Yeah, it's a little tricky. It's mainly made me just go and get Nook tickets and kind of talk about that.
I guess it just encourages you to get Nook tickets. Yeah, I mean, shall we move on to Nook tickets?
Yeah, Nook Miles, I think, is just
Miles.
the general new currency, right? So Tom Nook, he has just divested himself of bells. He now only works in credit, and so we now have Nook Miles, his new currency that he has decided is very, very important. And it's another way in which the game has added an element of progress, which is to say you now have these mini achievements, Nook Miles achievements, that when you talk to villagers a bunch of times, or you catch 3 fish, or you go to someone else's island, or you design a pattern, you will get a little Nook Mile achievement, which will give you 300 to 500 to 1,000 of these points that you can then spend on a bunch of different stuff. Now, I've just got to the point after Residential Services is upgraded where there are so many things you can spend your Nook Miles on, because I think for a while I was sitting at like 25,000 and I was like, well, yeah, I've got like 2 Nook tickets in my back pocket already. I don't really want to buy any more Nook tickets. And the catalog wasn't really expanding that much. And once that happens, once that kind of switch gets flicked, I was very in on being like, oh man, I wonder how easy is it going to be for me to get a bunch more of these, because there's a giant Godzilla I can buy, and there's a huge Transformers robot recipe.
Isn't it the instructions to build them? It's not them themselves, right?
Well, the Godzilla is the actual item. You do get the actual one. The Transformer, you get the recipe for it, which like involves a whole bunch of other stuff you have to do for it. But I bought a street lamp because I had one street lamp and I had one like palm tree lamp, and they were both outside my museum, and I was like waiting for a second street lamp in order to make it unified. And so I ordered one of those, and I ordered all these other things, and very quickly my Nook Miles went from 25,000 down to 10,000 in the matter of like 5 minutes.
Yeah, I had that as well.
Which, like that's kind of what they're hoping for you to do is get excited by the new things. And I think that's a really cool idea, is after 1 week with this game, we're now unlocking another level. And I think after the next week, we're going to unlock the next level, which is the terraforming and stuff. So, you know, for a game that usually from the beginning, you kind of have access to everything, I think this entry has done a really good job of pacing things out for you and slowly expanding it out to widen the possibilities.
And I think that just the number of Nook Miles you get for the things that you do and the number of resources and the things you have to do to get those resources, the game feels really balanced. It feels like if you want to invest the 3-4 hours to play extra that day, you will be rewarded with extra, say, wood, iron, Nook Miles, etc. It feels like you are being fairly rewarded for that extra play. And likewise, if you feel like you just want to play your 30-40 minutes of the day, then sure, you won't get as many Nook Miles, but you're still gaining stuff to progress these long-term goals. So like, the game does a really good job of showing you what the goals are, whether they're short-term, medium, or long-term, and allowing you to get on and off that train whenever you want, essentially. Like, it does a really good job of, there's always something to play for that, as you said, like beyond the earlier games, it just feels a lot wider and more diverse than, I swear, like day 3-4 in Wild World, you have everything and you can access everything. And yes, like the Mabel sisters will like come into the town, sure, but other than that and the upgrading of Nook Shop into like Nook Mart or whatever,
Nookingtons, the high-end supermarket like retail chain.
After that, it is quite sparse what new things happen other than like new villagers, which I guess just keeps on happening.
Like, I feel we pretty much beat Wild World, right? We had full houses, we had Nookingtons, we had pretty much every fossil, every bug, every fish, close enough to. I felt like there wasn't much more blood to squeeze out of that stone, whereas New Horizons feels like even if you do all that, there's still so much more left for you to do.
Totally, yeah.
And of course, this kind of depends on what type of person you are, right? And I think in the past, we have not necessarily, Bally, I call Mr. Vanilla, because you're the type of person who never wants to customize anything, is never into, character creators that much.
I've got a Japanese beach garden now, thank you very much.
Well, exactly.
That's not vanilla.
But that's the funny thing about it is, like, Animal Crossing, for whatever reason, we're very, very much into the whole aspect of this game, which is customization. I don't know how much that is to do back in the day with getting the Nintendo items, the Triforce, the Master Sword, putting those in your house.
Can't wait to get some of those. Not had any of them yet.
Exactly, yeah. I'm kind of wondering if they're even in the game yet, or if they're going to be distributed through events, because that would be a smart thing for Nintendo to do, and we can talk about that. But like, Nintendo treating this as a proper games as a service title and making a big deal out of events and making the Bunny Day and all these other Christmas events, holiday things to get everyone on board would be a smart move, right? Like, it would work for player retention, it would work for social media buzz, all those types of things. And
people just seem really in on this, and
it is the most I have ever seen of any single game on my Twitter feed in terms of pure volume, pure just variety of things people are talking about, videos, screenshots. Like,
it's a very, how do you say, it's a very Pinterest friendly game.
It is, yes.
Like, it's incredibly of that, here's a cool thing I did and I want to share it, and whether that's on Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest, Facebook, you name it, it's just so easy to share.
It basically is like Instagram the video game, right? Like, it is people at the current time in which we live, where everyone is indoors and no one can go out and do anything. It's kind of replacing, these Instagram stars who are like taking screenshots of like, oh, I'm out on my big boat and having fun, whatever, right? Like, the highlights of people's lives.
Why do they all own a boat? That's why.
Yeah, exactly. But it's what people are doing, right? People are posting the highlights of their villages, and like, I'm posting an image of my bedroom because I'm really proud of how it looks, and it's awesome. And everyone's doing that right now. It is unbelievable, because I have never seen a single game like this completely take over my Twitter feed. The last week, you cannot scroll for like 3 or 4 seconds without seeing something about Animal Crossing. It is unreal, and it is, I think it's working out for Nintendo. Like, this is the best-selling Animal Crossing by far, and is going to surpass all the other ones in its long-term lifespan.
Where do you think it can go in terms of top 5 selling games on Switch?
I think it's definitely going to be in the top 5, right? Like, it's probably not going to pass Mario Kart, because there is a universality to Mario Kart that it's a juggernaut and will never end. But I think that a lot of the stuff that's happening on Twitter and on other places is encouraging other people to pick it up, because there are a lot of people out there. I think Greg Miller said that kind of funny, they got some codes and he was like, does anyone want codes? And it was like, no, just him and Joey wanted codes. And since then, Blessing's been playing it and Andy's been playing it. Everyone has been picking it up since, because I guess of FOMO, because everyone is into this thing and people want to figure out why, I guess. People want to understand what makes Animal Crossing tick. And it's interesting because there are lots of people out there who just don't understand it. Like, I think Patrick Klepek has always said he doesn't want to do chores because he does enough of that in his real life. And, like, I totally get that, but it's a very different type of, thing. It is kind of a freeing version of real life. It's a real life in which anything is possible and money is, like, very available and there's no pressure, there's no negativity. It is such a positive game, right? Like, it's just such a relentlessly happy game, and I think that's what people want and what people need. And one of the things that's been really nice about it is just the village. I love my villages, they're so good. Sly, my alligator friend, he's amazing. Penelope, just what I want to shout out is the localization team, because the Treehouse and whoever was working on Animal Crossing, they always knock it out of the park, but I think this is another level in terms of some of the things I'm seeing on social media people have been posting. Just incredible writing, really funny, very incisive, and just such personality, such depth of humor and all that stuff.
I think they've really increased the number of animals as well. I mean, I obviously didn't play New Leaf, but it just feels like there's a far greater diversity than certainly Wild World. Yeah,
and you have multiple different types of villagers with their personalities, but different looking versions of the same animal even, right? Like, it's not just going to be one monkey. There's going to be like 6 monkeys, and you can get one of them that is slightly angry, one of them that is slightly, crazy. You're just going to get lots of different aspects and different personalities going around.
I have Flora the flamingo, who's actually an ostrich. But it looks like a flamingo. So yeah, I put a pink flamingo outside her house just to remind her. So, there you go. That's she can put a human outside my house.
Exactly. I really like my villages. Obviously, like, I talked about it at the start of the episode, but the tweet that I had, as soon as, literally the moment I took the screenshot of me giving Kat the litter box and then getting the fucking squat toilet in return, I knew in my heart of hearts it was going to blow up on Twitter, because there have been so many tweets about Animal Crossing that have like thousands of retweets, thousands of likes, and it's because we're in this like eye of the storm right now. It's just come out, everyone is talking about it, so I was like, this is the perfect timing, this is my one moment of fame on Twitter, I'm going to seize it, it's going to happen. And, it took a little bit of time getting there, but I knew it as soon as it happened. I was like, I'm going to blow up on Twitter. I didn't realize it would be to the number of 70,000 likes, but there you go. I guess that's my life now. It's very cool.
And I gave you those extra toilets as well.
You did. I now have.
I got your line of 3.
I have a line of 3 toilets in a row, because my center room. This is the problem I think with the center room. I've always been a little bit skeptical about what to do with it, because
it's a hole.
It's a hole where you've got like links to other rooms from it, so you have to kind of figure out a way to deal with it. And I think I'm going to wait until the rest of my house is done before I even think about the center room, because it's more of a nexus. I've just dumped a bunch of turnips there now. They're just kind of sitting there on the floor, not doing anything, waiting for me to find a really high price so I can, ship them off. But yeah, so the Nook Miles tickets, which is something we're kind of getting around to when we talk about Nook Miles, this is a thing that reminds me of the island in New Leaf. In New Leaf, you could go to this one tropical island. It was the same island the whole time, and Cap'n in his little boat would take you there. He would sing a song along the way. And I think the reason I burned out on New Leaf is because all I was doing was every evening, I was just logging on for 3 hours, going there, catching as many high-tier bugs as possible, coming back, selling them, and I wasn't doing anything else. And it was just fucking boring. It was me making money hand over fist for no reason other than to pay off my debts and pay off my bills. And I think because that was the only real goal, was expanding your house and paying off your debts. Obviously, you had the public works projects and things like that, but I wasn't. Back then, it felt much less well done in terms of how you move them around, where you place them. Like when you place a building in this one, it shows you an image of what it will look like and what the possibilities will be, and so you can kind of make decisions much more effectively. But that island was just kind of a grind, and now we have different islands. So now you can take a Nook Miles ticket and you can go to a bunch of different islands. I found one which had a bunch of bamboo in it. I found one which was Tarantula Island that everyone's been trying to get to because there's infinite spawning tarantulas and you can just catch them.
Apparently there's Sturgeon Islands and Shark Islands.
Yeah, I've seen Bell Island, which is just a little center plateau that has a bunch of rocks on it, and all of the rocks are money rocks, so you can just bash them and get tons of cash out of them. There's a flower island I went to that had a bunch of pink roses that are like a hybrid plant that I hadn't had access to, so I just took a bunch of pink roses, brought them back to my town. So they definitely have a lot of variety, and it seems like kind of roguelike in a way, like there's an RNG to what islands you get.
I've been super unlucky. I mean, you've visited more than me, but I've maybe visited 6 total, and I think all of them have been like vanilla. Or there's been some interesting flowers, but that's it.
There's always going to be like a thing that you will get there, whether it be coconuts or fruits or some rocks. And sometimes at the beginning you'll find villages. I don't know if villages appear after you've got those first 3. Because you have your campsite after that, which is when they come to your town and you can recruit them from there, I guess. And I need to go and explore a bit more with the Nook Miles tickets. I probably have done similar to you, about 7 maybe or so. So not too many, and it feels like a way in which for you to continue playing even after you've exhausted your island of resources, right? Because back in the day, you'd get all your fruit, you'd get all your fossils, and you'd be like, well, what do I do now? And even now, you can hit every tree, get all the hardwood, hit every rock, get all the ore, and you can completely just drain your island of resources, and then you're like, well, off I go to drain another island of resources. It definitely offers you the possibility of continuing your adventure, continuing your, as I said, if you invest the time into Animal Crossing, this game especially, it will reward the time you invest into it, which I don't know is the case previously. Because, you do get to a point where you're like, all right, like, there's not much more I can do today. Like, it's kind of stops you by these barriers as they are. So yeah. I'm trying to think what other elements there are, because there's so many things that they have changed in this game that has kind of flipped the script on Animal Crossing.
I think they've added even more fish and bugs. That's always fun. Like, there's just more.
Yeah. The
museum looks unbelievable.
Oh my god, the museum. Can we talk about that?
My goodness.
It is stellar. Like, and I liked the museum before. You could see everything displayed, but I think the thing that we haven't really talked about is how fucking good this game looks. Like, oh my god! Yeah. I didn't think I'd be saying that about an Animal Crossing game, because it has an art style. It's very minimalistic. But the weird thing I've always found about Animal Crossing is you have these very cartoonish animals, and yet all the bugs and fish are the most realistic fucking things in the world. Like, they look like the actual bugs and fish that exist.
And they look even more real in the descriptions. It's like almost like a photo.
Yes, yeah. So you're getting all of those and you're putting them in your museum, and the museum is just gorgeous. Like, you go to that area with the rivers flowing through it, and I didn't realize this in the quick look. They showed that you can step on these little panels in the fossil area, and it will like zoom out to this perspective, so you can get a better view of the fossils and kind of see what's going on there. But that is a great like reward, I think, for you catching all these different creatures and putting them in there, is the displaying of them. Like, that's the kind of visual splendor that you get. And yeah, it's crazy because, so much of this game is about aesthetics, and aesthetics only matter in so much as the game gives you things that look good, right? And even the things that look bad, you can make something of them. You can make jokes of them. Oh my goodness. There was, so I went to someone's town yesterday. I need to post this picture because this guy had created like this horror scene on his beach where the sand, it was written like from one of the patterns. He had written red rum, which I think is from The Shining. I think that's from that movie. And like there's this trail of blood from it, and there's a creepy doll sitting next to it and a slide. And I have this screenshot of me standing there just saying, in terms of like, what the fuck is going on here? There is a real like creativity that people have brought to this game. In terms of just kitting out that island with the weirdest stuff and the weirdest situations, and I don't think I've quite gone there yet in terms of high level galaxy brain stuff, because I'm kind of more focused on, hey, I have a really nice bedroom with a fireplace, and it looks really good.
Yeah, exactly.
I would like to maybe lean into some of that stuff, but I don't know. There's lots of creative people out there who are doing a lot with a little, and I find that very appealing. Just seeing it on social media, but also just visiting other people's towns and giving gifts to people. And I think Animal Crossing is a game that inspires really nice interactions between people. I think games and the type of game it is generally has an influence on people's behavior. You think about first-person shooters; they're all about violence. They're all about killing people and taking people down, being better than other people, and being number one. And that is why I think there's so much toxic behavior in things like Call of Duty and Overwatch and Apex Legends. All these games just breed this hostility and hatred. And I have not had a bad interaction at Animal Crossing. I've been to like 10, 11 towns. Everyone is so nice and accommodating and like, hey, here's, just take as many fruit as you want, and here are some gifts, and let's trade some gifts with each other. I think there's a sense to which the game itself molds around the mood of the player. And I think Journey's another game like that, where, you don't really have many tools in which to be a dick, but Journey is a game about cooperation and about, an experience, and the players of that game tend to lean into those themes.
Totally. I totally see what you're saying about games and leaning into themes, and you're right, Animal Crossing just feels like the most welcoming community, and you're right, people have been great. Just come to my town, check this out, look what I've built, have some fruit, and it's just kind of, you don't have to, blow each other's brains out to have a good time playing online with people, and there's not enough games that perhaps do that.
Yeah, totally. Like it really is this weird kind of social thing that, like, I went to one of our listeners' towns and he had 2 other friends on his town with him, and I was like, look, talking to them and like running around, and I was like, hey, should we just take a group photo as if we were like visiting the Eiffel Tower or something, or like, should we take a group photo? Because he had this really nice table, like wooden log table with 4 seats, so everyone could sit around the table. So everyone just sat around the table and we took a picture, and then it was posted to Twitter, and it was just this nice moment, And Animal Crossing in this time, I think everyone is just very glad that it's here, because it is just full of nice moments and interactions and people being good to each other. So hey, it's been a really good time so far. It's only been a week. I can't really believe it's only been a week of Animal Crossing. Time is weird at the moment, but it has definitely taken up a lot of my hours. We don't quite have the 10-day hour count yet. I'm waiting for that to pop up, and
I've already played more of this game than Smash Brothers.
Yeah,
that's crazy to me.
Yeah, it's pretty insane. But I think it's also because especially with the Switch is such a perfect system. I mean, I know everyone says the Switch is a perfect system for every game, but I think Animal Crossing in particular, I remember back in the day, you would open it up, you'd have to wait for it to load, you'd be in your bed, and you'd get out to the town. It would take a few minutes. Now, every day, you open it up, and sure, you got Nook or Isabelle giving you the daily announcements, but from sleep mode, especially during the day, sleep mode, I could just pick it up, run around, catch a fish, put it down after playing for about 3 minutes. And that little increment of time that I just constantly put into the game build to a thing that is much, much larger. And, we've had announcements that the Xbox Series X and PlayStation potentially are going to have this kind of multi-application ability where you can play multiple games at once and keep them suspended.
Like multiple save states.
Yeah, and Animal Crossing makes me wish I could do that, because it's the kind of game that you just want to have on all the time. Even if you're playing another game, you just want to be able to be like, oh, can I just pop in quickly and do this, get my turnips for the week or whatever, right? Like it just breeds that type of play session, which I haven't had with a game for a long time. And I haven't had with a game for a long time is just sitting there and running around and not really caring to do anything. Like, sometimes I just run around just to look at things and listen to the music. The music also is really good, but then it gets way better when you upgrade residential services. It's like, now we get the proper hour-by-hour tunes that really click into place and make things feel unique and different. So, hey, Animal Crossing, it's really fucking good.
It's a great game.
I don't think I expected to love it this much, honestly. Like, because I always abide by the idea that your first Animal Crossing will be your best Animal Crossing. You'll never have one like that again. And this game is really challenging that. It really is.
Totally, yeah.
I didn't feel that way about New Leaf at all. I played New Leaf mainly because I had a lot of friends who were playing it, and it was kind of a fun thing of the moment, right? When everyone's playing it, it's a fun thing of the moment to get involved with. But then, I kind of stopped playing and never went back to it. And New Horizons has definitely just improved it in a lot of ways and has made it
feeling that motivation to do a lot more, and it's giving me the flexibility to do those things I feel motivated about. Like it's not you don't reach dead ends in New Horizons like, oh, that'd be really cool if I could do that. You can just do it.
Yes.
I mean, obviously I've not unlocked everything yet, but I know I will have the ability that this river can do this. I can create an island that does this villager can live over there, like, and these are just options we didn't have before.
Totally. So thankfully, it's here, it's out. Nintendo have blessed us with its presence, and I will continue to play Animal Crossing for the foreseeable future. But that's not all we're going to talk about on what we've been playing, because obviously we'll talk about the Nintendo Direct Mini that happened in the next segment. But as a part of that, they released a demo for Bravely Default 2, a video game that has a bad title. Surprising from Square Enix, of course. Because it's not the second Bravely Default game.
Bravely Default 2 is a fine title. The bad title is Bravely Second. Yeah, well, that's the bad title.
It's just a fucking mess. Square Enix is just a mess of a goddamn company. Like, everything they call doesn't make any logical sense. But hey, anyway, Bravely Default 2, it's a new JRPG. It's from, I think it's a similar team to the one that worked on Octopath. I'm not like super.
There's overlap.
There's overlap. I think Team Asano or something. I don't know what the name of the team is, but the team that worked on Octopath. So obviously, like Bally, very excited for this game because it's the Octopath team, and you loved Octopath. And I was interested in it. I've always heard good things about Bravely Default. The soundtrack for Bravely Default, excellent soundtrack. I only know that mainly because I have the Bravely Default theme on my 3DS, and every time that theme is there, I'm like, this music kicks ass. So. And no surprises, because Octopath's music also kicked ass. And the music in this game is pretty good. I like what I've heard of it so far. That's kind of like where my enjoyment of the game stops, I guess. It's like the soundtrack, because I've been pretty disappointed with Bravely Default 2's demo so far. How have you found it, Bally?
Yeah, it's fairly disappointing, and obviously Octopath Traveler I love a lot, and it's always it has now set the bar in my mind of like what I like in a JRPG, whether that's battle system, music, the world, that sort of thing, and this game kind of doesn't match that game on all those elements really for me.
Yeah, absolutely. It certainly has a multitude of issues, and they're not individually are terrible, but as a totality they create an experience that isn't that enjoyable. And so we're talking everything from, it's a little visually inconsistent, right? You have this weird meshing between the small polygonal models of the characters and the really lovely painterly backgrounds of the buildings, and it's all this weird mix of, it feels like a painting that you can walk through, right? Like there is depth to it, but also there is a flatness to the textures.
Yeah, the painting feels very stationary, like it's not moving. If you compare it to a game like, say, Ori and the Will of the Wisps, which is very painterly, there's that sense of movement that just makes the whole world come alive a bit more. And yes, the town, for example, in this demo looks visually enticing and is like a painting, but it is very flat. It's very stationary. And once you have like your polygonal chibi character moving on that, it really sort of sticks out. It's quite jarring.
And I think the reason it's even more jarring is because your character just looks fuzzy as hell, like very blurry, and not like, it just looks ugly. Like there's an ugliness to it that I don't like. And even when you're in the overworld, like your character models look really bad. When you're in battle, they're much better, like they're much crisper, and you see that character model in dialogue scenes and things like that. But when you're walking around, and the other thing is like, it feels really bad to walk around. I don't know if you experienced this, but it felt like the movement felt very laggy to me. Like the character wasn't moving as fast as I wanted them to, or as smoothly as I wanted them to. And when you talk to NPCs, it's sometimes difficult to like line it up so you even talk to them. And then when you talk to them, the dialogue is delivered at this like languorous pace that like you can't skip faster through it. It's just, it feels like there's the tiny little cuts all the way through it that make it very frustrating to play. Like, it's not an enjoyable experience as a JRPG. And obviously, game feel is not something that I hold, sacrosanct for an RPG, because fundamentally the systems of it are all about, the battles and things like that. But I do like one where you can move around freely and it feels good to move around. Part of the reason I love the Xenoblade series so much is because it gives you a jump that, sure, the jump doesn't really do anything, but it's nice to have a jump. It's nice to have a feeling of movement, an ability, a mastery over your character in some senses. And this game just doesn't have that feel to it. And as a result, it just doesn't engage me in a way. And then there's the battle system, which I think is pretty similar to Bravely Default has been in the past. The idea is that you have these two systems, the Brave system and the Default system. If you Brave, you can do multiple attacks in a row. If you Default, you can build up points to do attacks. So it's like BP, I guess, is the currency. Octopath also used BP, I believe, but was a much more streamlined version, I believe, of this system. Like Bravely Default kind of started it, and then Octopath refined it, and now we're kind of going back again to the system that I don't think is quite as elegant.
It feels clunky. It just doesn't. I don't know. It's really weird. I mean, on one level, I was also struggling with this demo where, for some bizarre reason, they've just decided the demo is going to be harder than the main game, and they tell you this when you start the demo. And I constantly had like my Scottish Magic user dying because his defenses were just awful, and it was just a constant burden. Even when he was like defaulting and increasing his defense. So like, it does feel very strange that you almost have this, it's not pointless, but if everyone is defaulting the first turn just to defend to gain up BP, that kind of feels almost like a pointless turn. It's like, right, we get it, but why don't you just start with one extra BP or something? I don't know, maybe that's making the game too easy. But
so if you do use the if you attack an enemy before they see you, you start the battle with everyone having 1 BP. If you kind of surprise the enemy, you get an advantage. If they surprise you, they get an advantage, obviously. So it depends on how you approach the fight. But I see what you mean in terms of if everyone defaults turn 1 and then everyone attacks turn 2, aren't you fundamentally doing the same thing you would do in 2 turns anyway, which is attack then attack? Only you're doing it all at once.
Whereas it felt like there was more of a profit with Octopath Traveler. It felt like there was more meaning to the stacking.
Yes, and of course you can kind of really weight it in your favor because you can go into the negative if you want to, right? Straight off the bat at the start of a fight, you can say everyone maxes out Brave, does 4 attacks at once on the first turn, but that's probably not a good idea because you're likely not going to kill everyone with all those attacks, and then you're going to be left exposed for 3 more turns where you can't act at all and you can't do anything. And I think I found a nice middle ground of having a couple of people defaulting and a couple of people not, and like building up, say, my magic user to have 3 attacks, then he can attack every enemy all at once 3 times in a row, and that does a bunch of damage and really clears the way for the rest of your party to kind of do their thing and add things on and stuff like that. But yeah, not overly impressed by it, unfortunately. It's especially after I grinded for an hour in the desert, did a menial side quest where I had to collect 5 wolf pelts, went back to the guy, he gave me 9 potions as a reward, thanks NPC, and then I was like, okay, I seem like I've leveled up quite a bit, like I should go and go in the direction.
What level were you, do you know?
Maybe 14 or something, so like 15, maybe 5 levels I gained. So I was like, alright, let's go to the mark on the map where I'm supposed to go for the story. Walk into this dungeon, first enemy I encounter fucking just flattens me. Not even a chance. I didn't have a shadow of a doubt that I would be able to pass that challenge. They just utterly ate me up. And I was like, well, I'm not going to sit here and grind for another 3 hours just to go through this dungeon that, to be honest, looks kind of generic and not very interesting with just a bunch of monsters in it and some treasure chests. Like, and, I get it. People really love the Bravely Default series, and I'm sure there are going to be lots of people out there who will lap this up, who will love grinding it out and playing it. For me, it just made a really poor first impression, and has not really sold me on the game at all, unfortunately. In fact, done the opposite, has made me think, I don't think I'm going to buy this.
Yeah, this was kind of like a day one purchase for me, and now I don't think I'm going to pick it up, which is kind of like
those are the dangers of demos, aren't they? Like they
totally. If And we were so sold on the Octopath demo. That's another thing to say. Like, it was very much...
And it could be the opposite situation, right? Like, the Octopath demo promised something that didn't end up really paying off, right? Like, the Primrose storyline and stuff has such a good setup. And then it's like, kind of, okay, we're doing the same thing 3 more times. Like, it doesn't pay off the grand narrative that it kind of promises. This game could be the opposite, where it's like, well, this isn't really promising much. But the main game, because it's all these 4 characters and they clearly have a tie to each other and there's like this larger narrative, maybe something that appeals to me more, but I don't know because, it hasn't given me reason to care yet.
I mean, I'm kind of at the point where even if this does have like that kind of more grand linear narrative that Octopath was lacking in some aspects, I'm already kind of like with the battle system and the art style kind of put off by it. And that is a shame, where I was hoping it would just keep the good aspects of Octopath Traveler and then iron out some of the kinks, and this feels like it's not quite doing that, so might have to just wait for the Octopath sequel when or if that happens.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, people can try it. It's out there. It's on the eShop, so if you are still interested, I'd recommend giving it a go, seeing what you think, because you may feel different to us. But yeah, unfortunate that. And then, quickly before we wrap up, Bally, you finished Ori and the Will of the Wisps, of course.
I did. That is a real tearjerker of a game, and I loved the ending. It just really wrapped up in a way I was hoping, and I went back. It's a bit frustrating that I am stuck on 98% when I feel like I've done everything, and I don't know whether the game's glitched or there's something I missed, and we kind of went back and forth. It was really kind of unclear whether I needed all those gold orbs in order to do it, but 2% seems like a very small... I don't know. It's very weird and confusing, but I'm happy that I've seen everything I want to see with that game, and it is the definition of, that Mario Galaxy 2 to Mario Galaxy 1 improvement on a very good formula.
It's pretty much a perfect sequel, like in every way.
It is absolutely a perfect sequel. And it's a real shame that there are so many technical issues across Xbox, PC, in both formats. Like, it's a shame that, and those obviously bothered you more than they bothered me. And as you were saying, like, it was looking pretty blurry on my Xbox to you, when for me, I'm just like, hey, it looks good to me, I guess. But I do think it's a really, really impressive game. I think the difficulty was just right. I think the diversity in worlds, and I cannot stop thinking about Luma Pools. That place is incredible. I love it so much. I absolutely love this game. So definitely going to take some beating on that whole Game of the Year thing that we enjoy doing.
Yeah,
so we'll see.
We shall see indeed. Good stuff. Well, that is going to wrap us for the first half of the show, but we'll be back after the break to talk about the Indie World, the Nintendo Direct Mini, and all the news that has come out in this time. We'll see you after the break. Alright folks, welcome back to the second part of the show, wherein we shall be talking about all of the Nintendo announcements, because there was so many, totally are. It's been a weird time, right, Bally, because people have been waiting for a main Nintendo Direct, and we still haven't got a main Nintendo Direct. We did get an Indie World, and we did get a Direct Mini.
We've had everything but, because we also had like Animal Crossing and the Pokemon one, and there was another indie one, and...
there was a lot of stuff happening at the start of this year because there was the Smash Brothers presentation that Sakurai did. Like, we have pretty much had every Nintendo online digital presentation that isn't a regular Nintendo Direct. And it's weird because they call this a mini, but the mini was like half an hour long. So like mini clearly doesn't determine length of presentation. It's much more to do with, I guess, significance of announcements, maybe.
Okay.
And I
thought the regular Directs could go into like 45-minute range, or is that only E3?
No, they can definitely go that long. I've seen them go that long before, but I think there have been Directs before that have been 30 minutes. Like there was one E3 that Nintendo announced beforehand that their Direct or their digital event, whatever it was called, was going to be like 25 minutes long, and people lost their minds. And yet it was one of the best presentations they'd done because they just squeezed a lot into a short period of time.
Yeah.
So it's all about how you use the space, I guess, and around you. But anyway, the wait for a regular Nintendo Direct continues, I guess. But hey, we've got lots of news here, and maybe Nintendo's approach, and I think obviously, you know, the COVID-19 stuff, the world is in a weird fucking place. A lot of these, they started that mini Direct out with a bit of a message saying, hey, these release dates might change. We don't know what the fuck's going on. You know, just be prepared for that. So the fact that they just dropped it on YouTube, it wasn't like a hype lead-up announcement. I think it was smart because it kind of set expectations for people. It was like, okay, like it's just here now. We don't really have any hype building for it going into it, which if they had done that beforehand, I think people would have come out of this one more negative, and I think people have come out of it being like, yeah, that was a mini Nintendo Direct. Like, they were right to call it that because that's kind of what we got from them. So yeah, we've got that to talk about. We've also got the Indie World, which happened last week because that was the GDC stuff that would have happened had GDC been a thing, but it wasn't. So what were your thoughts overall on the stuff Nintendo has shown us recently, Bally? How are you feeling about their lineup for 2020? Are you worried at all? What do you think?
I don't know. I'm not overly excited. I don't know what I was really expecting. Obviously, the big stuff is going to come at E3. Well, whatever E3 is.
Yeah.
You know,
in June,
you know what I mean?
all the companies
all
will
those
do
streams.
online streams and we'll get some news. It won't be called E3, but you know, as for the future going forward, we'll still refer to it as E3, I guess, because, you know.
And I think generally there's a lot of cool stuff in there, and maybe not a ton that appeals to me personally, but I think there's, if you compare it to other years, I think it's more, they're doing okay. Like there's some stuff in there that's interesting that I think will keep people ticking on over until E3 comes and we kind of know what the big hitters will be for the rest of 2020, because maybe I would expect to know at least maybe one or potentially two more than we currently do. So in that sense, it's probably going to be a slightly less exciting year for Nintendo than they're constantly going to get compared to 2017. And it's definitely not going to be a 2017, it feels like. But hopefully we'll see more later down the line.
Yeah, totally. So we're kind of in a holding pattern at the moment, right? Like, Animal Crossing is all I want to do with my time, so I'm fine, right? Like, I have stuff to dive into, and obviously, like, there's a huge backlog. Switch has so many games, so I'm not too worried about things at the moment. You know, they had a pretty banger year the last half of 2019, so I think that they're kind of cooling the jets a little bit more this time. So let's maybe just pick some of our favorite announcements and go through them. You know, there's some things in here that I'm not really that bothered about, so let's maybe just focus on the things that we're excited about. So I'm going to kick things off with Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition. You know, this release date of 29th of May has been leaked for a while. People have kind of known about it through retail stuff and things like that, but they did announce that alongside it, obviously being full-blown remake, looks beautiful. Did you see Dunban's face, Bally? Dunban's face makes me want to cry tears of joy, because I was a little, let's say, apprehensive about this art style from the first look we had of it, the kind of brief look when it was first revealed. And I was like, I don't know if I like Fiora's face. I don't know, because weirdly, a lot of people are negative on the Xenoblade, the original art style for people. I feel like they do a really good job with it, like especially the eyes, even though they're kind of sketched on faces, they get across a lot of emotion. Like, they really do a great job with those characters. And so when I saw the more anime-esque aesthetic, which is definitely pulling from the second game, I was a little worried about it, but I definitely think, having seen a longer look at it, seeing Rhine, seeing Charlotte and Melia, like all these characters that I know and love, they're looking a lot better. So I'm a bit more kind of contented with it. But they announced a epilogue to Xenoblade Chronicles, which seems to be Shulk and Melia going on an adventure to find the ruins of Alchemoth, it seems like, and they're on the Bionis Shoulder, which I know the Bionis Shoulder was a part of the game that they had to cut from the original, and there are still assets that exist from before that, had happened, and you can find them in the game code. But it was supposed to be, because there's that part of the game where you get to the top of the Nopon tree and you just kind of teleport to Earthsea. It's like the one moment in the game where things don't link together nicely.
Yeah.
And the reason is because originally you were supposed to go from Machna Forest to the Bionis Shoulder, then to Earthsea, because that kind of links between those areas. And yeah, so it looks like that's not going to be, because when they first showed the game, people were like, oh, are they adding this to the main game? My guess is like the Bionis Shoulder is just the area that you go to, because seemingly Alchemoth, if that was like knocked off of like the end of Xenoblade, there's like a lot of shit going on, and so if Alchemoth is like knocked down, then you're going to go to Alchemoth and figure out what happened post Hyentia, all that stuff. I don't know how it's going to work out, because the end of Xenoblade is real weird and shit happens. So I'm excited. I'm very excited. I'm a little worried about voice acting, because I didn't like the new VO doesn't sound exactly like Adam Howden, who plays Shulk, and I'm also concerned that they are able to get Jenna Coleman back to play Melia, because back when she played Melia, she wasn't like a big star from Doctor Who. So I hope that they have the original voice actors.
That would be like the whole budget.
It would. I would. Yeah, I'd be really concerned, because I'm like, man, she's really good as Melia, and I don't want someone else to play Melia, but also she's much more famous now and important, so I don't know if that's going to happen.
Interesting. Yeah, I didn't think of that.
Yeah, but the good news is that you can play this epilogue straight away. So if you're already a fan of Xenoblade, you've already played the game, you can just jump straight into it. You don't need to go through the 90 hours of JRPG again just to get to the epilogue, which is nice.
You think you're going to go for this day one?
Yeah, I think this pushed me over the edge, really. Like this trailer, seeing it all again, seeing how nice it looks, and also having the bonus stuff, like having an additional kind of story arc to a story that is probably my favorite in video games. Like, absolutely, I'm going to do that. I'm not sure I have the faith in this in Monolith Soft, because like since Xenoblade 1, X didn't have as strong a narrative. 2 has some good stuff in there, but I think a lot of it is a bit too pandery anime JRPG friendship is magic bullshit, so I really like the philosophical themes of the original Xenoblade, so I'm kind of wondering if Takahashi still has it in him to really pull out a great narrative. And Torna was bad. I like Torna quite a bit, so potentially that is a thing that could happen. So I don't know. I'm a little bit... I'm not 100% in on how good the extra stuff's going to be, but, I'm going to get to play one of my favorite games ever again in just crisp HD. It looks really nice. So I am excited for it. I'm definitely going to be there day one, and I will probably play the epilogue first, and then we'll play through the main game again, just because I want to get to the new stuff as soon as possible. But I'm glad they put that in there as an option. It's a nice thing to do. So very excited about that. Bally, do you have a game that you want to talk about, or a thing, whatever? Because lots of kind of DLC things being added here.
Sorry, DLC for what game?
Lots of things. Loads.
All
of
right,
things,
I just wanted to mention Star Wars Episode 1 Pod Racer, because
yes,
just the weird. I owned this game on PC and absolutely loved it, and I'm so excited that like this game is coming back to Switch, because it's third party stuff that has lots of rights linked to it, and from like a long time ago, sort of early noughties. A lot of it is just never going to get re-released or redone or whatever, and it's really cool that Nintendo seems to have found, I don't know, some sort of loophole or some random side deal with EA, or who knows how it works and who owns the rights to these games. But they've got Star Wars Jedi Knight coming. Jedi Knight 2 is already on the Switch, and like now they've got Pod Racer coming. I just think it's really cool.
It's amazing. And I never really played Episode 1 Racer. It was one of the rare Star Wars games that was on a Nintendo platform. I guess back then they were more frequent, right? Because you had Rogue Squadron, you had stuff like Shadows of the Empire.
Battle for Naboo is another cool one.
Right,
Same
yeah.
Factor 5 people. So it'd be awesome if they could get the Factor 5 games. They are ultimately the best games.
Just put out a trilogy of those for sure.
Oh my God. Rogue Squadron like 1, 2 and Battle for Naboo would be unbelievable. So I don't know, and there's like Rogue Squadron 3, of course, but yeah, it's really weird that these games are here, and they've not really been remastered or anything, which is very strange. I mean, maybe they've been touched up a tad, but they look pretty raw.
Yeah, I think these are just like higher resolution versions, which is to say, if you play these games on a modern PC today, they probably are the kind of versions that you would have on that, which is just like, hey, it's a bit crisper and nicer to look at, essentially. So
yeah, I hope it plays well. I hope it's not just kind of aged nostalgically in my mind and how much I love episode 1. And
yeah,
I hope it actually feels okay to play. Because it definitely did at the time.
From what I've heard people talk about that game, it does hold up apparently. So
that's cool.
That's exciting. And if it's like, I don't know, $8.99 or something, that's a great price to jump in for that stuff. Let's talk about Super Smash Brothers, because this was it's a weird announcement,
really weird,
of a Smash character. Although in some senses it makes logical sense, right?
It does make sense for them to announce that there's a character coming from ARMS, but we don't know which character. I think it's just that they felt they had to say something, but they weren't at a stage where they could say everything, because they know that there's this delay and they don't want to. But personally, I would have been happy if they said nothing and then down the line they say, here's the ARMS character, there you go. But they obviously felt pressure to, I don't know, announce something now.
Right, and especially with this being a direct mini, like, you don't expect the big boys like Smash Brothers to show up in a direct mini. Like, you expect them to save that for a major event, either Sakurai presents whatever character or a main Nintendo Direct. And usually Smash Brothers reveals are like beginning and end of presentation type deals. But I think after the reaction to Byleth, maybe Nintendo took that into account to be like, oh, people want weird, crazy third-party characters. They don't care about first-party Nintendo characters anymore because Smash Brothers is just so ridiculous. So it made sense, especially because like ARMS is the type of thing where you're like, well, I'm kind of surprised they didn't put an ARMS character in from the beginning of this Smash Brothers game, right?
Yeah, it's a long time since that game came out, kind of, and a lot of the hype has dropped off, and now they're kind of doing this free demo. And
they've done so many. I cannot count how many times they've tried to do like, hey, here's a free weekend of ARMS, you can play it for free. I must have racked up at least 4 or 5 hours of ARMS just through free stuff, because I've never bought it, like I've never owned it myself. And I feel like I've played quite a lot of ARMS, and it's still cool. Like, I really like the premise of it, but ultimately it was kind of a bit paper thin in terms of the modes and things in that game. Like, I would really like a bit more to flesh it out, or even just like a different style of game to use those characters, because I think actually they did a really good job, like creating an amazing art style and really great characters, but there's not much to back them up, if you know what I mean.
I like the world and the art style the best. I think fundamentally for me the actual gameplay just doesn't feel enjoyable enough to keep me engaged. Like, whether that's sort of using the Joy-Cons loose or detached, I should say, or with a controller, it just doesn't feel right.
I just don't think either control method works, right? Like, the motion controls, they feel sometimes inconsistent. The button controls feel a little bit unwieldy. Like, it neither feels great, and so you can never really get a handle on them. Which is a bit of a shame.
So it's surprising that they are pushing it as hard as they are, and they are, I guess, potentially working on a sequel. Who knows?
Maybe that says something, right? Like, it maybe says that there's another ARMS universe game happening at some point.
If that slows down the next Mario Kart, I'm going to be grumpy.
Right, yeah, totally, because that is that team. That would be an interesting thing. So, hey, we know what one of the next 6 characters is.
Yeah.
We got 5 more characters. How many? What are your feelings right now in terms of first party characters versus third party characters?
In terms of number?
Yeah, like, do you think we're going to get more third party this time, or how's it going to net out? Like, because
I think there's maybe 2 or 3 really big third party Banjo-Kazooie style characters.
Yeah.
I think that the biggest 2 that would set the internet ablaze, that I think both are possible, honestly. I think one is Sora and the other is probably Master Chief.
Yeah.
And I think they're both possible.
Yeah, again, I think we've said this enough times on the show. I have everything I want with Smash Brothers, so whatever, man. Like, but the thing with the ARMS character is, I do hope they go a little bit weird with it, because the obvious pick is like, it's Spring Girl / Ribbon Girl / Spring Man, right? Spring Man, Ribbon Girl. I think that's how it goes. Although Springman is an assist trophy already, so how that would work, I'm not sure. That would be the obvious pick, is like, hey, here's generic, like, protagonist and female version of generic protagonist, which they tend to do. Like, if you go by Fire Emblem characters, like, here's main boring character again. I would love if it was another one, like, even if it was like the weird green guy, or if it was Twintel, because Nintendo knows the internet fucking loves Twintel, so that would be a better pick, honestly.
I think we're probably going to get another couple of fairly standard first-party characters, you might say, but I'm confident that we'll get 3 kind of really big out there ones.
Yeah, I'm excited because I think actually an ARMS character would work really well in Smash Brothers, you know. They're a fighting game character. They have loads of different things they can do. I'm excited to play that when it happens in June, apparently. So maybe it will be, you know, around E3 time that we will get a bit more information on who that is, and they might launch, you know, it could be a shadow drop on the day of Nintendo's, you know, digital event, whatever they do. That'd be exciting. Any other ones you want to pick out here, Bally, for you?
Bravely Default 2. We saw quite a lot of that. That's probably kind of the biggest game we knew about going into this direct that they talked about. Now, at the time of recording, I should say I have played some of the demo.
We'll have probably talked about it in the first segment. Oh, behind the curtain, we haven't talked about the first segment yet.
So I'm going to be confusing everyone massively. So I'll just say I'm currently lukewarm on the demo, but it was cool to see a lot more information about this game. I'm still feeling weird about the art style in comparison to a game like Octopath Traveler. Like, it does, I'm not wild about
it's weird. It mixes this like polygonal chibi style with painterly, like almost 2D pieces in a 3D environment.
And
it's a strange
from what
approach.
I've played, it doesn't run. It runs fine. That's the wrong word. But it doesn't look great in gameplay wise. And obviously it's not fair to just keep comparing it to Octopath Traveler, but I just think visually that game looks so much better and crisper for what that art style is going for. This feels very weird.
No, I get that.
And it was a little concerning, and I know they had the big announcement at the start saying, like, COVID-19, these are all these games are potentially going to be delayed, we don't know yet, sort of thing. But to just sort of say 2020 for Bravely Default 2 is quite vague. So I thought at this stage we'd at least have a quarter. Like, that is quite strange.
Right, yeah, they probably just don't want to commit at this point in time, because, you know, as we said, things are ever changing. Yeah, it's good that they put a demo out there, though, because that's what they did with the original Octopath, and that seemed to be a good thing for them in terms of getting feedback from people about what they should change and what they should do. Ultimately, I don't think Octopath turned out, you know, as well as it could have done, even with that feedback that they got from people, but, you know, hopefully that team gets to make another Octopath Traveler and makes it a Game of the Year contender.
It was weird because kind of the issues you had with Octopath Traveler kind of weren't revealed as such in the demo. Like, it wasn't clear that the entire game was going to be that structure. I don't know, but you know, like a lot of the tweaks and things they made were to do with like the battle structure and stuff like that. So
yeah, it was more like UI, quality of life type of things they edited. Cool. Let's talk about Ring Fit Adventure, because this I think is one of the fun announcements. Ring Fit's a game that, you know, I think both of us have been like, we should probably get that. Like, people really like it. It seems like an actually really good fitness tool. And especially right now, I think a lot of people want to get Ring Fit, but the problem is it's sold out everywhere and people are price gouging it, and it's a bit of a nightmare to even get your hands on a copy from Nintendo. So they have added a new mode, which is a rhythm game mode, which includes like songs from Mario Odyssey in there. They've got some other music. It's really cool. As soon as I saw that, I was like,
Breath of the Wild and Splatoon.
Yeah. I was blown away by, like, oh wow, this makes so much sense and is such a cool twist on the idea, which is kind of exercising while also playing a rhythm game. Like, wow, it's kind of Beat Saber-esque in a way, right? Obviously probably not going to get you in much of a... It probably will get you in a good amount of a sweat, but maybe not as much as an intense, extreme Beat Saber on hard difficulty or things like that. There was something else they added as well, maybe another extra area to go through. I can't quite remember, but hey, it's really cool to see Nintendo supporting Ring Fit beyond just the initial release and saying, hey, we can do extra weird stuff with this thing now. Get a rhythm mode in there. Have you checked out any prices online to try and pick up Ring Fit yet?
No, I'm not. I'm gonna have a little look now, actually. But I am very interested in that game. I always sort of, when they got the good reviews, I sort of thought, right, I really want to give that a go. And now for them to add this extra mode that just came out, oh my god, there is price gouging going on. This has it for £120.
Okay, good, great.
And yeah, that's the top result on Amazon.
Okay.
And it doesn't appear anywhere else.
Great, good, excellent.
Yeah. The standard edition is like currently unavailable. That's just like some one-off seller who's pricing it 120 quid. So yeah, maybe we're gonna have to wait a while to play this game. But really cool that like it is selling well, and obviously, I was gonna do like a tweet saying, what is the best game for COVID-19? Is it Animal Crossing or Ring Fit Adventure? And I think both of them are just like very suited to this situation that we all find ourselves in, as well as video games more generally, to be honest. But yeah, I really want to get back to this. Well, get it at some point.
Totally. Any others that stand out to you there, Bally?
Not a ton, and that kind of speaks to the strength, I thought, of this mini direct. It's very like minor announcements. I don't know, I'm just looking down this list.
No interest in diving into Bioshock or Borderlands or any of these 2K games that got announced?
Random, and I know Borderlands actually is dropping off of Xbox Game Pass this month.
Interesting. Okay.
I'm not that interested. There's a lot of games I want to play before I play either Borderlands or Bioshock, to be honest.
Yeah.
As much as both those series I think have their place in sort of modern video game history and are probably very good games, it's just not on my list of things to do.
Yeah, XCOM is the one I want to keep an eye out of, because that's certainly the type of game that I like, like it's a turn-based strategy. It definitely, I've watched quite a bit of XCOM, Giant Bomb played some, and it has a Fire Emblem-ness to it, which is definitely speaking to me, and it's more likely I'll play that game on PC, because I imagine the Switch version might be a bit rough, as it tends to be the case with most of these third-party ports, but it's nice that that's there. And I think there's definitely an audience for that game in particular, which is pretty cool. What about Good Job? I watched Brad Shoemaker play some of this. This is a game. I was trying to find what studio it was, and apparently it's a studio called Paladin Studios. They worked on a mobile Katamari Damacy game, but this is a game that Nintendo published, which just basically got announced and released on the day of this presentation. And you basically play as a character who looks like, the image of a bathroom, like when you go into a bathroom, like male or female bathroom. A stick person, essentially. And you play as like the stick person who is in this company and is doing odd jobs like within each floor of the building, and lots of things break and you can fling things around the place and it causes damage, and it seemed like a pretty goofy good time. Little puzzly elements to it. I'm interested in it. It's not something that's like speaking to me to like play it right now, but it's very cool that Nintendo continue to do this trend of like snipper clips and the stretchers, and now Good Job, where they're kind of working with smaller developers and publishing these games, putting their kind of seal of approval on them essentially, and then putting them on Switch, and it seems to look pretty great. So
yeah, looks cool.
Definitely interested in it at some point. Ninjala was another one I wanted to talk about. Ninjala, like the most rip-off of Splatoon aesthetic possible.
Is that the first we'd seen of this game?
No, they showed off Ninjala a while ago, maybe a couple of years ago in an indie presentation. And I was always curious about it because I was like, oh, they're definitely trying to lean into this type of area. But always my problem with this type of game on Switch is, well, there's not going to be enough player base for it, because like how many people are going to buy it? How many people are going to stay on it for a community and things like that? And they announced at the end, it's free to play. I was like, oh, brilliant. Like instantly that gives it an injection.
That's almost like the baseline that these types of games just have to be now in the current like market. Like if Apex Legends is coming out and is free to play,
especially on Switch, because on Switch you're competing with time for Smash Brothers, for Mario Kart, for the major like Nintendo, now Animal Crossing, like online games on Switch. You're competing with Nintendo's first party. That's where the major communities are going to kind of rally around. And so if you're something like a Dauntless or a Fortnite, you have to rely on the fact that you're free to play to get people in there. Obviously, Fortnite doesn't need to rely on anything because it's the biggest fucking thing in the universe. But you know what I mean? Like, a lot of these, like, Paladins came out on Switch, and I think the only reason that I can jump in now and get games in Paladins is because it's free to play. Because otherwise, it would be dead as a doorknob. Like Nidhogg 2, you can sit there for 6 hours and no one will join a lobby for Nidhogg 2, which is a bummer. So I'm glad that Ninjala is free to play because I think it's the type of game a Switch audience can rally around, and it will hopefully build a nice community with lots of players in it. So that's good to see.
I've got a game I want to point out.
Okay.
Clubhouse Games 51 Worldwide Classics.
Yes.
It was like a combination of the DS game 42 all-time classics mixed in with Wii Play, like in one game.
Right.
And it's like first party, right?
I don't know. I don't know who's making this. I think it might be a different developer because I think 42 All-Time Classics in America was called Clubhouse Games, so I think this might be the same company. It's just a localization thing.
We don't have clubs in the UK. So
right, exactly. We just have all-time classics. That's the UK for you. I was watching this. I was like, oh, okay, this, and then they're like Carrom Board. I'm like,
it just
what
kept going.
The fuck? But here's the thing, right? Like Carrom Board is one that people won't know what it is unless you're Indian or whatever. Carrom Board is a game, you've played it with me, Bally, before. It's this giant board where you flick these pucks and you have to get them into little mini goals. They're kind of in the corners. It's almost like a snooker board, but square. And you play it on the ground, you place it on the floor. I remember when we had a lot of Pogs. Remember Pogs you'd get in like crisp packets?
We'd use like the Pokemon ones that came in the crisp packets from the second generation.
Yes, and we'd use that and play Carrom Board, because like sometimes the major big puck pieces that I have, they're quite like thick and they hurt your finger when you flick them because you're supposed to flick them. I've played that game since I was very young, and now being home in Edinburgh at the moment, the Carrom Board is in my cupboard, so me and my sister might get that out and play a bit of that for a little while. Relive some memories.
Saying you need to like put a bit of powder on it, like
you do. Yes,
powder.
It is supposed to have powder on it so that you don't like. So things can slide a bit easier and things like that. And it's a weird thing. Anyway, that was very weird to see that just pop up randomly during that sequence of weird games.
I mean, it is a worldwide classic.
It is a worldwide classic.
It's got to be in there.
Absolutely. Cool. I think that pretty much covers a lot of things that I was interested in. They did do like a bit of a montage reel at the end that had some things come to Switch, like I can't remember now. It's just nothing's come to my mind. But
there was like the Pokemon stuff. There wasn't much more info on that. It was like a bit more info on like Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3 DLC or something. And I don't know. I wasn't interested that much in most of the other announcements. They all felt quite small, but I know that they appeal to certain audiences.
I think a lot of them are like, hey, here are more ports, here are more updates to games you already have. Like there was the Animal Crossing update. They were like, we're doing Bunny Day, and I'm like, oh great, like Nintendo treating Animal Crossing more as a games as a service.
We can't say Easter, so we're gonna say Bunny Day.
Exactly, yeah, of course. But the idea that you can go around the island and find the eggs, and like everyone, like you can invite people around to your own island and like have an egg hunt and stuff like that. It's just a nice idea. And I think that Nintendo going all in and like making a big deal out of these events means that people are going to treat it more like a Destiny style game where you're always coming back to Animal Crossing, you're always engaging with new things, because Animal Crossing has always kind of been one of those games, but Nintendo have never made a deal about like, today is this thing is happening, get on it. I think in our just social media climate right now, that just is much more of a big deal. Even back from when New Leaf was happening, I don't think Twitter was at the kind of level it is now in terms of the way video games are talked about. So
people want those exclusive items, so they're gonna come in even if it's just for the need to get those things like made of eggs, you know.
Yeah, I mean, even when I have taken a break from Overwatch and I'm not playing it much, as soon as they have a seasonal event, I will log on to Overwatch and get my free loot box because it's there and I will take it from them. You know, I'm not going to deny that to myself. So
everyone likes free stuff.
Exactly, free stuff is very good. So yeah, overall, solid Nintendo Direct Mini. You know, Xenoblade, I'm excited to replay that. One of the best games ever made. You know, so. Good that more people get exposed to it. I think especially because Xenoblade 2 sold so well on Switch, there are a lot of Xenoblade fans out there now where there weren't before. So now they can experience the game that is better than that second game, which is the original. So excited. They also, of course, Nintendo, the week before, held an Indie World presentation, which usually they do one of these around March every year, because at GDC, Nintendo has an area, they usually have a mixer, GDC mixer, where a lot of the press go to it, and they play a bunch of indie games that just got announced in the Indie World presentation. Of course, this year, there was no GDC, there was no mixer, but Nintendo obviously still had indie games to promote, to get out there, and to talk to people about. And I like the way they handled this presentation in terms of the setup, because mostly it was them cutting to developers in loads of different countries. You had loads of different languages being spoken and subtitled across the bottom, which I think is really nice to show how global like the independent community is on Switch. And I overall just thought it was a nice way to present this information. So yeah, it was pretty cool. How do you feel about the Indie World overall, Bally? What were your takeaways from here?
Pretty solid. Normally, Indie Worlds are like, I feel strongly about the games at the beginning and the end, and fairly mixed about the stuff in the middle. This time it felt like I cared more about the stuff in the middle, even though I think the highs were nowhere near as high as what it's been in the past, for example.
Yeah, definitely. There was no like big Cuphead moment, or
Golf Story
or something that stands
Cadence
out.
of Hyrule.
Yeah, exactly.
These are like the big ones.
Totally. And I think some of that is a little bit biased, because it's like, hey, here's a thing you already know about, it's coming to Switch, and to some degree that's less interesting than things you don't know about.
But that's where Golf Story, I think, doesn't fit that mold, where it was something new, and all of a sudden, just from seeing like a little bit of gameplay, people were like, whoa, this is incredible.
I totally get that, but also Golf Story is just Mario Golf, right? Like there is a reason why it's not just because it's a brand new thing you've never heard of. I think it's much harder for a brand new thing you've never heard of to make an impact on you, because you've not heard of it before and you don't know what it is and you don't know how it plays, which is the tricky part of this. And I think Nintendo like to focus on things that people haven't heard of, and sometimes that will just mean that the audience is like, well, what is this? I've never heard of it before. And it's like, well, yeah, they're trying to tell you about new things so you can expand your horizons and maybe try a different video game that's not the same 10 video games, which I like. So let's do the same thing here. Let's pick out some things that stood out to us. I think probably the Last Campfire is the one that both of us were probably most excited by.
Yeah, definitely the number one for me. Just totally looks like my kind of style of game, kind of Zelda-like dungeons. The art style just really worked as well.
Some amazing lighting going on there, to the point at which I was skeptical that it was running on Switch. I was like, is this being real with us right now? Is this just PC footage? I'm not sure. But the interesting thing about this is from No Man's Sky developer Hello Games, and Sean Murray popped up on the screen, and with one of the other developers, I guess, and introduced the game. And I was like, are they going to bring No Man's Sky to Switch? That seems ridiculous. But no, they are bringing this game, which I believe was actually announced and shown at a Game Awards presentation 2 years ago. I think it was 2018 Game Awards, potentially, that it was shown off. Maybe it was last year. I can't recall exactly. But it felt kind of new to me in terms of I didn't remember it from before. I knew they were working on something, but looks very, very neat. The type of thing where you're kind of going around finding these fires and like bringing back these little chibi characters to life again. They almost have a Journey-esque look to them, in terms of their design. Kind of feels like that, but yeah, that was the big one for me. What else stood out to you here, Bally?
Probably the game at the opening, Blue Fire. It just had like this real neat looking third person movement to it that looked quite enticing.
Yes, definitely. That was definitely, in terms of its platforming and jumping and things like that, was up my alley. The one thing about it is like it is kind of more 3D and like open space, and I wonder how that runs on Switches with all these games. I'm always going to be skeptical about frame rates and resolutions and stuff, because for the most part, like, it's a 50-50 toss of the coin of whether a third-party game is going to run well on Switch or be good on Switch. So, but that one did look cool. The other one I thought looked really cool was Summer in Mara, which is a kind of Stardew Valley, Harvest Moon-esque. You live on a island or farm or whatever, and you go around and you do stuff. And I think this one for me just spoke to me a lot more than a lot of these other games I've been seeing, in terms of It looked a lot more polished. It looked a lot more clean. I really liked the art style of it. It had a good vibe to it, good bright colors and things like that. And there have been games like My Time at Porsche, which I've seen, and like Dragon Cafe, Little Dragon Cafe, I think it was called. The games that are trying to do this thing but don't quite nail it. This is the first one I've seen of that type that I'm like, oh, I might be actually interested in that. It seems like it's doing a better job with it so far. And yeah, and then there were some other things as well. Baldo was one where it had a very Ni no Kuni art style, very like Studio Ghibli Zelda style to it, which was definitely neat. Quantum League, I like the look of that. That again though, it's one of those, like, it's a multiplayer game, and I wonder how that does if it's not a free to play thing, especially being an independent game. Like, we've seen stuff like Morphe's Law come out, and obviously that was just a mess technically, but also, you know, there's not enough people online playing Morphe's Law for people to get into it and get into the ecosystem. But Quantum League was really interesting because it's about like time manipulation and like rewinding and creating a secondary version of yourself. And it had a pretty clean art style to it as well. It kind of looked like the type of thing that would work on Switch pretty decently. So yeah, that was another one that stood out to me. And yeah, there's a few other things that have come to other platforms. Superliminal. Have you seen much of Superliminal before, Bally?
I can't think about it off the top of my head, but I might have.
It's the one where you take objects and like they grow in size and like perspective wise, you know, like
you
shift
yeah.
They go bigger and smaller.
It looks really cool. So it's not out yet on other systems.
It's been out on PC a little while now. Yeah.
PC, okay, got you. Yeah, it looks really cool. I question how it would run on Switch.
Yeah. How do you feel about moving out? That's the kind of Overcooked style one where you're moving furniture to places.
Oh yeah, it looked very Stretchers, like that whole two people moving a thing through like a puzzly kind of style area. I'd be interested in that, definitely. Yeah,
it seems like the kind of co-op thing that it feels like we're now in this era where lots of games are getting inspired by Overcooked. Like Overcooked seems to have inspired a bunch of top-down kind of cartoony, you know, co-op adventure style things that have been popping out here and there. Good Job is kind of like that. I don't know if Good Job has co-op to it though. That is an interesting question.
Did you say Moving Out was the one that initially started on Stadia? Or
yes, yeah. I believe it was first announced for Stadia, but obviously that thing is not doing too hot right now, so I'm sure Moving Out will do much better on the Switch, where it's kind of built for the audience that is there already. And yeah, I don't know, there wasn't a lot else here that really stood out to me.
Wingspan
was weird. Apparently that is a card game. That is an existing card game.
Oh, okay.
That, you know, I thought it was a video game, bird spotting, you know, go and look and see what birds you can find. But yeah, apparently it exists already. It's like a tabletop game. Interesting.
But hey, I think there'll be a big bird spotting community, and someone will say, "Hey, have you heard there's this game called Wingspan?"
Yeah.
And people go, "Okay," and then, you know, Nintendo sell a few Switches.
Sure, yeah,
it's like another market.
Yeah, no, definitely. That's definitely potential. I think the name that we were just laughing about was Eldest Souls. It's like, I mean, come on. Can you get more of a just like generic Dark Souls title that kind of sounds like Elder Scrolls, Elden Ring, Zelda Scrolls, Elder Scrolls? Like, it was just a bit weird. And it was, you know, it's a top-down action hard game that you fight bosses. We get it. There's a million of these. Like, I think, you know, when we talk about the most influential games of the last decade, like, I think you're stupid to not say Dark Souls, because, like, my God, the number of games inspired by Dark Souls is ridiculous. It has had such a huge impact on the industry. Indie, AAA, everything. So,
I Am Dead.
Yes, that was...
It was very strange. It kind of, like, took you through this cel-shaded seaside-y town that reminded me of like the kids show Balamori.
Yes, absolutely.
And then like they go through this museum, and at the back of this museum the guy just says, "I am dead," and it's like, okay. Right.
Apparently that is a game where you are kind of manipulating objects in the environment and like doing puzzle solving and stuff like that. So that sounds more interesting to me than what was kind of presented, because
yeah, it'd be nice to get that from the presentation, you know. It's sometimes these trailers miss the point.
Yeah, no, I think they did like do a little bit afterwards, because obviously shout out to Johnny Vignacchi who was hosting this, but you got the voiceover after that trailer was shown that I think went into a little more detail about it, but I think we were kind of just talking over it at the time. So
okay, fair enough.
Yeah, Cool. Well, yeah, I think that pretty much covers most of the things we were interested in that presentation. Of course, there's a lot more stuff that was announced. The last one, actually, Sky. Sky is it's a game that's been on mobile for a long time. It is the follow-up to Journey from that game company, Genova Chen and crew over there. Obviously, you played Journey earlier this year, right? That was earlier this year, wasn't it? End of last year?
End of last year.
It was end of last year, right. And Sky is a game that, like, I think a lot of the games industry has been waiting to play because we're like, it's going to come to real things soon, you know. Not to disparage.
I like that. Real things.
Yeah, you know what I mean.
The real things for gamers.
Yes, of course. So I'm interested to see how Sky does, because it's much more of a social game. I don't know, like, I remember watching some of the quick look and being like, I don't really know what this is, like how it works. So I'm interested to see what happens when that actually comes out and people will review it properly. But yes, that's pretty much it. Overall, it's nice to get little bits of news here and there. You know, anything to take people's minds off what's going on is probably good. But yeah, let's keep waiting. Video games are still coming out. You know, we've got lots of things to occupy ourselves with at the moment. So I think, it's due time that people just stop worrying about what Nintendo are going to announce and maybe just spend some time actually playing the things that they put out there for once. Because I think there is a danger of a lot of people out there who get so excited for video games, and then when the video games come out, they're like, I don't really want to play it now, or get excited by the next thing. And I
mean, sort of, if you think of it how Nintendo operate, which is obviously very much financially, for them, Animal Crossing, which hasn't been out since 2013, since the last original game, for them, New Horizons is such a big staple that they could have released 3-4 B-tier games and they wouldn't make as much money as this game is in the process of making. So I think that
they would be in danger of cannibalizing themselves, really. So
well, exactly. So I think they really just want everyone to be buying Animal Crossing, and yes,
that seems to be working, judging by
seems to be working, but the idea that this half of the year is quite sparse for Nintendo, I think from what they're thinking about financially, it's not going to make a difference.
No. And the next first party game out will be Xenoblade, right? That's probably the next thing.
Yeah.
Which for most people, Xenoblade will be a new game, right? If you think about the audience of Switch versus how many people bought Xenoblade on the Wii versus how many people owned a new 3DS and bought that knowing that it was a new 3DS game.
The Wii was a long time ago at this point.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people who won't have played it.
In September, it will be the 10-year anniversary, I think, of... Actually, no. Well, yeah, I think it came out in Japan in 2010, so I don't know what month it came out in Japan, but it was 2011 that I got it because it came out around the same time, a little bit before Skyward Sword did in the UK. So, yeah, almost 10 years since the original Xenoblade, which blows my fucking mind. That is crazy.
It does feel weird that often we will know a little bit more about a big top tier game that's coming out, say summer, November time, and we kind of don't this time. So if say you do get I don't know, Mario Odyssey 2 announced at E3, I think it's unlikely that'll be released November or holiday time. It's more likely that'll be the following year. Right,
because it'll get naturally pushed by the fact of things going on right now. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I think it's a time when people are inside and playing video games, so I think that, it's a good time to do that. So if you're struggling to figure out what to play because there's so many things, I don't know, just go on Backloggery and click the fortune cookie. That's what I do sometimes, and then I ignore it.
It's good fun.
It's good fun. Cool. Well, that will wrap us up for the show. Thanks, everyone, for listening. Thanks if somehow you got here from my viral tweet and are listening to this podcast because you saw a thing on Twitter. That's really weird. It's just so strange. I don't know what my life has become. The universe is trying to tell me something about Animal Crossing Bally. I don't know what it is, but it's telling me something. The fact that the Wild World video is over 100,000 views, and now have a viral tweet. I don't know what my life
You're going
is.
to get some villager come to your town and like, Nbz, you must be the guy with the viral tweet. Exactly. Like written into the game.
Yeah, exactly. Great. So you can, of course, find all of the things we do all over the internet, all over places. You can support us if you would like. Obviously, it's hard times out there, so I do not blame you. If you are penny pinching and saving things, but if you would like a bit of extra content to get you through the day, you can head over to patreon.com/thisnintendolife, where we would like to thank some of our supporters, Bally.
Yes, thank you to our two $10 tier patrons. They are my fiancée Caroline and Atari Alex. But thank you also to all of our other patrons. We hugely appreciate all your support.
Absolutely. You can find our show on Twitter by going to @TNL Podcast. That's TNL Podcast, where you can get updates on everything we do. All of our links, all of our...
Everything we do, but mainly Animal Crossing.
But mainly Animal Crossing, yeah. Mainly just loads of that stuff. You can find me on Twitter, where I am now famous, @Lord Nbz. Where can they find you, Bally?
I'm on Twitter @Ballyman91. That's BALLYMAN91.
Cool. You can obviously find the show in loads of places. We're on Spotify, we're on Stitcher, we are on SoundCloud. No, we're not. That's a lie. I don't know why I said that. I think that's one of those things that podcasters say and it just came out of my mouth for no reason. We are not on SoundCloud. Don't go to SoundCloud. We are on
SoundCloud's still big.
I think so.
I hear about it less than I used to.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it exists. People use it. But it's mainly music people who use it because like you have a time limit of like 1 hour and I'm like, that's barely enough for half a podcast. But like if you're making an album, that makes sense. So
I see.
Anyway, yeah, you can find us in different podcasting apps. You can download those and subscribe to our show and listen to it all the time, which is good. Update, I want to give an update because I spent an entire day, like a week, was that 2 weeks ago? I don't know what time is anymore. I re-uploaded like 55 missing episodes of the show. They're all there now. So every episode is now back on the main feed. You can go and find any episode you want.
We have successfully transitioned to the new host. And everything is there and our minds are at peace.
Yes, finally. So please just satiate all the effort I put in and just download a random old episode because otherwise why would I doing that?
It's a lot of work, but not for much feedback.
Oh, well. I'm sure people are glad that they can go back and listen to a random news special. The weird ones were like, I was going through episode by episode and then I was like, oh wait, here was a random news special we did on the new 3DS or whatever. So yeah, those are there for your perusal if you so desire. I think that's pretty much it. You can obviously send us emails into the show. Tell us how you're doing, how things going, what backlogs are you getting through at the moment. We'll do some emails next week. Obviously this week we're talking a lot about Animal Crossing, so I wanted to give it a bit more space, but we would like some more emails from you. You can go to our Discord, of course, links in the description. But Bally, where can they send those lovely emails to?
Please send your emails to thisnintendolife@gmail.com. That is thisnintendolife@gmail.com. You can also post a comment in our Discord server, link to that in the description, and also on our Twitter account. We'd hugely appreciate it. And yeah, just have a good time hanging out in Discord, where I think it's important that people do like talk to each other.
Yeah.
And just because you're living apart from everyone else and not seeing people face to face, you can still have we're video gamers. We have a great time chatting to people online and playing online. Like this shouldn't be, as big of a difference perhaps for a lot of people who are very much into a hobby like video games.
Sure, yes. But, people posting in the Animal Crossing section a lot there, so we've been to different people's towns and stuff and had some good connections go there. So go check it out. Enjoy. That will pretty much close us out then. Thanks for joining me, Bally, as always.
Thank you.
Any plans for, staying inside? Any board games you're getting out? Any creative projects that you're finally getting to?
I don't know. I think reading. That's one I'm
fucking
started.
Hell yes. Jeez,
reading,
how long has it got me to fucking get you to read this Star Wars book that we both said back in...
It only took a global pandemic.
It only took a global pandemic for Bally to read the book that he suggested we should read Star Wars books together. I ended up reading it, and like 3 months later, Bally still hadn't, so...
I'm a couple of chapters in. I'm enjoying it. I'll read more
Cool.
today. It's
No,
good fun.
exciting times.
Me and Caroline were just cooking a lot, sitting in, working from home. It's very strange because you're only like a half-hour walk away from me right now, but we are both in isolation.
Yes, exactly.
The Alter Bridge song keeps going round and round in my head every time someone mentions the word isolation.
Yeah, I know.
So that's good. But
Great.
yeah, I'm alright. You picked up any new hobbies?
No, I might write a book. I don't know. We'll see.
Write a book?
Yeah, I've been thinking about writing an epic fantasy book, so that's
nice.
Yeah, we'll see.
Give it a go. You should maybe start with a short story, but just a thought.
No. Let's go 700 pages, mate. That's all I'm about.
Go big or go home.
Go big or go home. Cool. Well, thanks for listening, everyone. We will be back in a couple of weeks' time. Until then, stay safe, stay sane, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye, folks. The musical interlude used on today's episode was 7 PM from Animal Crossing New Horizons. Copyright Nintendo 2020.